If you were looking at maximizing the amount of gains that you want to make and maximizing your genetic potential and building a physique that you actually like, it's really important you know what role genetics play when it comes to bodybuilding, because you can get years down the line and you can end up becoming really disgruntled just because you don't have the right genetics. But if you don't know the right information, then you don't know what things you need to be aware of. So let's get straight into the video. What role do genetics play in bodybuilding? Genetics are important to understand because they can give us an insight into the expectations that we put upon ourselves. Oftentimes, people will put unreasonable expectations onto themselves with the idealization of them achieving something which is not possible in their nature. So an example of this would be you want to have a certain kind of physique, but because of genetics, you just aren't capable of achieving it because there are certain parameters, perhaps it's bone structure, perhaps it's the amount of muscle density that you can have, is just limited because of your genetics. And this will lead people to a deep level of dissatisfaction, which can lead them to quitting or attempting things which may cause harm, such as injecting steroids and doing some crazy shit. In essence, what we need to do is focus on what we can control. A lot of guys end up making this mistake, especially when they get into their intermediate stages of lifting and they haven't made the amount of muscle gains that they want to, and they look at their favourite influencers and they look at people online who have made triple or double if not triple the muscle gains that they've made in like half the time. And no wonder so many people are hopping on compounds, hopping on steroids, or just doing some dumb shit. It's really important that you know what parameters you need to stick within, and you need to set reasonable expectations for yourself. And it's also important you don't beat yourself up, because if you do beat yourself up, you're not going to be able to achieve the physique that you do want. And well, you want to achieve your goal, so why don't we just like look at it through a sense that we can actually enjoy it? Okay, so we need to think of this like the cards that we've been dealt in a game. Once we've received them, we cannot change them. It's also not worth getting emotionally turbulent over something that we cannot change. We can only focus on how we utilize them. We can apply this principle to genetics. So certain things like intelligence, height, you know, your wiener size, these kind of things, we can't change. So it's super important that you know what you've been given from biology, let's say, from the universe, from God, whatever you believe in. It's really important you know what you've been given so that you know what you can and can't change. Because there's no point stressing over things that you can't change, because if you do start stressing, you're just giving yourself you're just making life unhappy and miserable for no reason. We need to focus on what we can control, and obviously we'll get into that, but it's really important that we set these boundaries and set these expectations earlier on, because if we don't, then we're going to be absolutely miserable. So genetics contribute to things like the proportions in terms of a skeletal frame, so these are somatotypes, your muscle insertions, basically the way your muscles are going to look on your body, the rate of muscle growth that someone may experience. Obviously this is an individual's response to a training stimulus, and then an individual's capacity for muscle growth, basically being their genetic potential. So you can't change these things. What you've been given in the sense of these parameters is what you're stuck with. Obviously there's things that we can do to really optimize our ability to build muscle, but for the most part there's certain things that you can't change and there's certain things you need to accept and deal with. So obviously going into skeletal structure, for some reason people question this and people argue against it and say, oh, it's not really a thing. Somatotypes are a thing. Obviously we've got ectomorph, endomorph and mesomorph. People will end up arguing and saying that, oh yeah bro, I'm an ectomorph, but they're just skinny and they just haven't put enough muscle. Obviously we can tell that somatotypes are a thing because people have different bone structure and their skeletons are just different. And if you don't believe me, well, look at this. We've got David Lade here, Henry Cavill in the middle, and then we've got Eddie Hall. I want you to look at these three men and tell me that somatotypes aren't a thing, because as we can clearly see, if Eddie Hall wanted to be a bodybuilder and have really aesthetic proportions, it would be literally impossible because his shoulder to waist ratio is trash because of his genetics, compared to someone like David Lade whose shoulder to waist ratio is absolutely insane. This is perfect for bodybuilding, whereas someone like Eddie Hall is obviously world's strongest man, right? He's exceptional when it comes to strength lifting. So you need to identify, and obviously you've got someone like Henry Cavill who's in the middle, where he just looks awesome, he just looks like a man. But you need to pay attention to which one is most accurate to yourself, ectomorph, endomorph and mesomorph, because these are things that we can't change and these are things that we do need to be aware of. So it's important that we seek comfort in what we've been given and find a way to maximize our own potential instead of disowning it and despising it. It's silly to get down over something you can't have any influence over. So why would you waste your life on things that cannot change? This is one thing that I've never understood, but I found myself to be in this situation myself where I was so disappointed, being like, oh man, oh, my genetics are awful. I'm a hard gainer, bro. Like, I'm just struggling. I'm always skinny. You can't change it. You can't change the way your skeleton's built. So instead of putting your energy into hating yourself, put that energy into focusing on what you can influence. Your training, your diet, and obviously we'll get into this stuff, but it's really important that we just mentally become aware of this kind of shit. So next we've got muscle insertions. Muscle insertions is such a crazy thing because guys, you'll see this in so many instances, guys will want to grow certain parts of certain muscles without the inclination or the knowledge that muscle insertions play a massive role in the way that our muscles look on our body. So let's get a little bit into it. So firstly, what is an insertion? So your muscles have an insertion and an origin. The origin being the place from which the muscle fibers run from, and the insertion is the place that the muscle fibers run to. Basically, the insertion is the place where all the muscle fibers connect and join onto somewhere, obviously in your tissue and on your body. So here's an example. The bicep originates from your scapula, so it originates up here, and it inserts onto your radius on your forearm. So it begins here, and it comes all the way down here there's all these muscle fibers, and they all join together at this point on your radius, which is the outer part or the upper part of your forearm where your brachioradialis would be. And then we can look at your lats, for an example. Your lats originate from your thoracic spine through your lumbar spine and all the way down to your iliac crest. So as you can see, the lats actually have an absolutely massive origin. They span all the way down basically to your pelvis, and it all connects up to the front part of your humerus below your bicep. So this is really important to understand, because if we don't know this, we don't know how this can influence the way that our muscles look on our body. So the reason why we need to know this is because our muscles are connected to joints and bones through tendons. Tendons play a massive role in the way our muscles look, and these are based entirely off of genetics. You cannot change the way that your muscle tendons look on your body, and I'm going to show you what I mean by this. So let's begin with, we have lats. So we have a small lat tendon versus a very big lat tendon. So I want you to pay attention to this. I think this is Kai Green. I could be completely wrong. But a lot of guys go for the notion of like, oh man, I really want to build my lower lats. And I was one of these people too. I was doing so many different exercises you see on TikTok where you're like, yeah, bro, if you just like crunch your pelvis a little bit and crunch your rib cage, you'll feel your lower lat more. This stuff is bullshit. If anyone's trying to sell your program saying you can get your lower lats bigger, they're fucking lying to you, and I'm going to explain to you why. The reason why this chap's lats look bigger and the reason why this chap's look smaller is purely genetics, because this chap here has a smaller lat tendon. Okay, so you see this little this Christmas tree bit here that these chaps have. This is your lat tendon. People usually think this is your erector spinae. It's not. It's not your spinal erectors. The Christmas tree is your lat tendon. And because genetics play a massive role into this, you can either have a small lat tendon, which makes your lats insert a lot lower, or you can have a high lat tendon, or one that fans out more, which means that your lats insert a lot higher up. You can't change this. So if you're someone who has a back that looks more like this, you've just got to accept it. Whereas if you're someone like this, then you've clearly been blessed by genetics. You can't bias certain parts of the lats. They all connect within the same range. If you're just focusing on bringing your elbow closer to your pelvis, then you're going to contract your lats fully. It's really important you be aware of this, and you obviously look at your own body and see what your own genetics are when it comes to your tendons, because if you don't, you can end up being sold something saying, oh yeah, I'll help you build your lower lats, when that's actually not the case, because your genetics don't allow for it. Next up, we've got things like biceps. We can look at someone like Arnold, who had really nice high peaks of a bicep and a relatively small bicep tendon, versus, I don't know who his chap is, but as you can see, this chap's bicep tendon is pretty trash. You can see the gap between his muscle fibers and this part of his elbow, in contrast to Arnold's, is absolutely horrendous. And this is just something you can't influence. What this guy can control is how big his bicep gets to an extent, but it's really important we're aware of this, because if you're trying to get arms like this, but you have genetics like this, then simply you're never going to be able to get arms like this. And that's okay. And then obviously we've got chest. We've got Arnold once again, and then we've got Terry Crews here. As you can see, Arnold's got a really nice, thick chest, with very small tendons and obviously insertions onto his sternum, whereas we have Terry Crews, where his pec fibers insert in a completely different way, leading to a less full chest. Now, different people have different insertions. This is something we cannot change. So it's really important that we understand this, because there's probably guys out there who have this gap here who are doing stupid like plate pinch exercises, being like, yeah bro, I want to grow my middle chest. Bro, you can't bias your middle chest, I'm afraid. You can just bias your pecs as a whole. So if you do have this, then don't be sold under the notion that you can do exercises that can get you this, because genetics will say otherwise. And next we can look at calves. We can look at someone like Larry Wills, where he's in really good shape. Dude looks absolutely awesome, but unfortunately, because his genetics are the way they are, his calves just aren't getting any bigger. And you can tell by the way this man trains. If he could get bigger calves, he would, right? Contrasting this with someone like Dorian Yates, obviously he's on more compounds and he's a lot bigger, but as you can see, his calves insert a lot lower compared to Larry's, and they're a lot bigger. This is purely genetic, and there's nothing Larry can do about it. All Larry can do is focus on building up the muscles that he can build up. And obviously Dorian, well, he's one of the best bodybuilders of all time, and this is why, because his genetics were allowed for him to be so. So when it comes to bodybuilding, in order for you to actually achieve the most fulfillment you can from it, you've got to accept that there are some things you can't change, man. And because there's literally no point stressing over stuff which you have no control over. You can't control your height, you can't control your skeletal size, and you cannot control the way your muscles insert. What you can control are other variables. But it's really important that you get an understanding of what you've been given and you accept it, because the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can actually focus all your energy into your training and into the variables which you can change. So the things that we can change and the things that we can focus on are our level of commitment, how much that we choose to learn, our diet, our training, our recovery, our mentality, our patience, and I can keep going on. There's so many things that we can focus on and improve and alter and iterate. It's almost stupid to be stressing over, fuck man, what are my lat insertions like? Oh, I can't build my lower lats. Or man, I really want to get a bigger inner chest. Or like my triceps insert real high. Why stress over that? Why be worried that some guy has better insertions than you, when that's not going to change anything for you, and it's just going to make you resent and envy other people? And those negative feelings are going to make you dissatisfied, they're going to make you hate yourself, and then they're going to make you quit, which is not what we want, because bodybuilding is a beautiful pursuit of understanding yourself and getting closer to your physical body. And we can go on. Rate of muscle growth is something that really makes guys lose hope, and this is myself included. It's literally taken me years to figure out how to build my physique, yet you see some people online make twice the progress in half the time. But we can't forget that there are so many variables that come into play, things like genetics, things like access to equipment, things like access to the right knowledge at the right time. So this was me when I was 20. I wasn't 20. Well, this was me back in 2020. Okay, 2021, and this is me recently, right? As you can see, yeah, I put on a bit of muscle, but nowhere near the leanness. I don't have the shoulder growth that some people do. I look good, but I don't look exceptional like some people do on social media. People get this on social media within a year or two, whereas this has taken me almost 6 years to develop, right? And I can't be. Why would I lose sleep or be upset over the fact that people have gotten it sooner than me? You know, for a long period of time, I was so upset because I just didn't have the rate of growth which I was wanting. But then I realised, like, the journey isn't necessarily about what the guy next to you is like. Obviously, if you're hopping on stage, it's different. But for the most part, it's about really understanding yourself, getting closer to your body, and learning what works for you, rather than stressing about other people. So let's take a look at examples. So obviously, we've got someone like Hussein Farha. Whether or not you think he's natural or not, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I probably don't believe he's a natural, but this is an example. We have someone like this who's achieved a physique from this to this in 3 years. Obviously, if we look at me, nowhere near that in 6 years, right? Someone like this in 3 years. Contrast this with someone like Joe Fazer, who has taken, 7, 8, 9 years to go from this to this. And this is impressive. But if we look at the contrast from Hussein to Joe, Hussein's built a tremendous amount more muscle in contrast to Joe in half the time. Now, this isn't negating the effort that Joe's put in. I can comfortably say that Joe's probably put in a tremendous amount of effort, and so is Hussein. But we just need to see and look at genetics. Obviously, if some people are putting compounds in, is paying attention to those things and not getting worn out just because other people look better than you in a different type of time frame. All it is about understanding the difference that people, understanding that different people have different stats that will enable them to achieve things easier, quicker, and to a greater extent, all because of genetics. There are simply some things that you can't control, and if you cannot control it, then it is of no concern to you. Focus on the variables that you can change, focus on the variables that you can iterate, and if you do focus on them and you optimize them as much as you possibly can, then I guarantee you're going to be achieving the greatest level of happiness that you can. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm. Comment something down below if you want to have a conversation about this. Subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.